Okay, we're starting a little bit late, but we'll call the meeting to order. And Susan, will you call the roll? I'm here.
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 Okay, we have nothing to report out of closed session. First item is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes anybody wants to make to the agenda?
I'd like to, do I wait for the next one if I want to pull something off first?
No, you do it now.
I'd like to pull off 7.6 just for a comment.
7.6. Okay, and we'll move that to the action agenda. Any other? Okay, so we have a motion to approve the agenda, pulling 7.6 off the consent agenda and making it 10.6A.
I will so motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So at 5:05, we have a public hearing on the sufficiency of instructional materials. So I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to address the board regarding the availability of textbooks and instructional materials in the district? No one stepping forward. I'll close the public hearing. We will, of course, be addressing that later, and if people want to comment at that time, that would be appropriate. We also want to acknowledge at the beginning of the school year, Muse, and the last year donations totaled $35,915.54, and according to this, since its inception in 2001, Muse has contributed $919,186.35.
Thank you.
So I know Marianne from Muse is here. Thank you for, Marianne is on the board. I don't think anyone else here is on the board from Muse, but that donation of nearly $36,000 last year was mainly for the teacher grants that they give to teachers. They had asked teachers to come and make a proposal, and I believe the limit last year was up to $1,000. I think that's been uncapped from what I hear. Yeah, and so they do that twice a year. And also a big donation to our culinary program. So, thank you.
All right. Did you want to say anything?
Yeah.
Okay.
We look forward, actually, I will say something. Our next grant is in October, so we look forward to our teachers coming out again in October for the next round of grant.
Okay. So item 7 is the consent calendar. We've taken 7.6 off of the consent calendar. May I have a motion to approve the remaining items on the consent agenda?
I so move.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so our student trustee is not here, so
Kim and Tobin went to a conference or a meeting in Ukiah, and they said that they were running into traffic.
okay.
On 253, they were having a major delay, so they're going to be late.
All right, so we'll fit them in. We'll fit Kim in when she gets here. So then we'll go straight to you.
All right. Well, I think it's been a good start to the school year. I know, Mark, you pulled off 7.6, but I did want to report on our enrollment. That preliminarily, of course, we'll wait till October for our official CBEDS collection, but we are up to 560 students, which is 50 more than we had last year, so a big increase. And we see most of that increase in the middle school. Our middle school classes are very large, so that's quite a jump. We were at 540 for a while, then 525, 525, last year 510, so we'll see if that continues. Been working hard to verify residency, speaking of which, enrollment. We want to make sure that students attending Mendocino Unified actually live within the school district. And if not, we're asking them to fill out district of choice paperwork. So that I've been busy doing that. Our cafeteria changes that I talked about last month, just before the school year started. We are in full swing here. We are offering fewer meat options during the week, but when we do, we're offering organic chicken and the local Covelo beef. And I've had lunch a couple of days, and I do honestly feel like the difference is noticeable. I have had a couple of, well, one complaint from one family just saying that their kids aren't eating because they really are meat eaters and they're not into some of the vegetarian options. But overall, the response has been very good for the cafeteria changes. And we're really hoping the numbers increase. The first 3 weeks of school, then the first 2 weeks, the numbers haven't increased. So hopefully if the word gets out, more students will be eating here. We've had our second round of youth mental health first aid training in the district, so we've now participated in 6 of the 8 hours for that training that Cecilia and Anna are putting on, and it's going really well. I have 2 district committees that I'm operating this year. The Wellness Committee is one, and we have 15 people interested in the Wellness Committee, which is great, and so I'm trying to schedule the first meeting. And then a School Security and Safety Committee. We have 10 people interested in that. Let's see, and also we are forming a district committee, not a parent committee necessarily, but a district committee on chronic absenteeism. So there are 7 of us that are going to participate on that. I'm calling it a task force, so we can really try and reduce the number of students who are chronically absent in our district. And Otto and I traveled to Greenwood Preschool last week to meet with a donor who is trying to raise money for some various projects out in Greenwood. And things from painting, interior painting, to providing outdoor shade for students, to possibly even installing a bathroom. So really into a lot of fundraising out there, and that community really supports its school. So that's all I have on my list.
Any questions for Jason? Kim, I know you just come into the room, but are you prepared to do your report now?
Sure.
So one thing though, Kim, is when you stand on your X, we're using a new wireless microphone, which it's not going to amplify your voice, but it will on the recording. So actually, everybody who presents and has a comment, we would like to do that from now on. So.
All right.
Thank
you.
Deep breath. We are basically just getting started with the beginning of the school year. We are in week 3. And one of the things that has been interesting for us is the addition of many new students. We talked about it last month. We are overall up, I believe, 17 students at the K-8 level, or at the K-8 school, but 25 students at the 6-8 level. We have 25 more students, so a whole class size. So that's been a little bit of an adjustment for us, working around different classes and rearranging class numbers. Albion and Comptche are also have increased in their numbers, and we had 2 new students started out in Albion, a 1st and 3rd grader this week. So it continues to grow, our school-wide. We had Comptche back to school night last week, and it was very well attended, 100% attendance out there, which was fantastic. Cecilia and Kathy and I spoke with the families, and it was nice to get to know a lot of the new families out there as well. We had back to school night here at the K-8 last night, and let's see, is there anything else? One of the things that I did want to say is that there is a training that Tobin and I are doing with a network of principals from all over our county and other counties. There were people from quite a ways away, and this is something that is going to happen throughout the rest of this year, and we found out today it's supposed to be a 3-year program. But unfortunately, they're always on board meeting night, so we're going to be coming in late like this for a couple nights. But today went really well. It was our first day, and I really enjoyed meeting with other principals. I worked with a middle school group, and there were other K-8 principals there, which is an interesting combination too, but I'm just excited about what we're doing with that and to be able to talk to you more about that as well. As far as school initiatives, we are looking at continuing with our grading policies and fine-tuning that in the 6-8. A letter went out today to families, and I'll be sending a copy of that to you guys as well, just to see where we are and kind of keeping you in the loop about what we're doing about that. So,
Very good.
thanks.
Any questions for Kim?
Henry, you have a question?
Oh, no. Sorry.
There you go.
Am I jumping the gun?
No, not at all.
Am I jumping the gun?
That doesn't amplify your voice.
I know, but they gave me a thumbs up.
Right. You
I
want to
think
introduce yourself, though? Because
Pamela
people-
Duncan, Union Co-President, with Mimi, who is home right now. I think that I'm going to sound kind of redundant because to kind of piggyback off what Jason and Kim said, I think we're all working with the much larger class sizes this year. It's something that has taken us a lot of time and a lot of effort to kind of work with. So that's a continuing struggle, and a lot of time is being spent on that. We finished back to school night at both sites, and it was very successful. A lot of teachers put in a lot of hours to make that really nice. And it's off to a good start.
Thank you. Does anybody from CMIS wish to be a speaker? All right. Board members. Jim.
I have nothing.
Winspear.
Nothing this evening.
Nothing for me?
Nothing, sorry.
No, that's fine. We'll go all the way down the line and go to item 10.1. And Jason Fruth, our new business manager, will speak for the first time in that capacity and present the unaudited actuals financial report.
I'm double fisting here. Can you hear me? All right.
Yeah, well, I think Susan has a presentation for me. Do I have to stand on the X?
No.
Ideally.
Ideally, okay. I'll try not to roam. So yes, as Michael said, my name is Jason Fruth. I'm the new business manager here for Mendocino Unified. And I'll be presenting the unaudited actuals for the school year for 2017-2018. It's pretty much what it sounds like. It's the actuals of the budget that just have not been yet audited. This should only take about 5, maybe 10 minutes, depending on how much the board wants to test my knowledge. I'll just give a quick, very high-level overview of what the actuals are, mainly for the general fund. I'll talk a little bit about the year-end actuals and how they met the budget for 17-18, the plan, and then I'll go into the general fund a little bit, which is the main fund that we basically pay for the vast majority of everything out of. And then I will go into the other funds. So there are a few other funds that we work with. This is mainly just for informational purposes and just kind of show you the overall transactions that happen with those funds. And then I'll talk about what we'll be doing over the next few months in the business office. So this is the super high level overview. So the general fund, we had an absolute total of $8.54 million in revenues and transfer ins. We had $8.57 million in expenditures and transfers out. So if you're not familiar, transfer ins and transfer outs, those are basically monies that move back and forth between different funds. So in the context of the general fund, it's basically not revenue from any sort of grants or government programs. It's coming from some different fund. There really is only one transfer in, and that's from our MCN program, and they make an annual contribution of $40,000. But the transfers out, there's certain other programs like the cafeteria and special ed and preschool that the general fund partially helps to pay for. So if you look at the difference, we got a total of $29,332, and on an $8.5 million budget, that's actually pretty right on the money. You're looking at about 1/3 of 1% and a decrease in the fund balance. I'd like to take all the credit for that. My predecessor, Cynthia, you know, was the business manager last year. She did the budget, she did the closing. I love to hit that number in all my future years as well, but that's pretty good, 1/3 of 1%. I did talk a little bit about the other funds. We have a cafeteria fund, and I will go into each of these a little bit in a later slide. There's child development, the preschool fund, our self-insurance funds, which is basically how our money is shuffled back and forth with our health insurance. MCN, which is the Mendocino Community Network. We have a special reserve fund and a bond interest fund. These are really purely informational. It's just to show that they're still there, they still exist, and that they're still doing what they're supposed to do. We also have 2 capital project funds for developer fees and deferred maintenance. And I'm just going to give very high levels of those later on. So just to break down the general fund, we have our revenues at the top there. So you can see primarily we're funded by the LCFF. And this is pretty much local property taxes. Since we're basic aid, about $5 million of that is from property tax. Pretty much the rest of it, other than very small dribs and drabs, is from other state apportionments. And then we get a little bit from federal programs and grants. And then we have other state, which a lot of this would include things like lottery funds and other restricted funds and unrestricted funds. And then other local is local grants and donations and other forms of local taxes. So if you look at that, our LCFF, obviously revenues, if they're higher in the actual column, that's a good thing. That means we got more money than we had planned on getting. So we're up 1% there. And you can see for this year, we budgeted conservatively to be lower than what our actual is. For our federal revenue, we're up 21%. So obviously that's a big, I thought there was it doesn't work on there. But that 21% increase, you know, that's a little larger than we'd like to see. But in this case, the federal funding a lot of times is from reimbursement programs. And so we never want to budget for programs that are on a reimbursement basis. We spend the funds, we submit to have it reimbursed. They may or may not reimburse it. So we never count on that until we have like check in hand. So that's why we did get reimbursed for a lot of that, and that's why you see a 21% increase in there. Our other state and local, a lot of these are from a lot of smaller sources, so it's really hard to get those exact. So you see dips in both of those. We do expect our other state for 18-19 to be around what we planned for last year. It was 10,000 off, or 1.5 points this year. But you'll see in other local funds, we were down almost 1 point. But I think this, again, because of those fluctuations, and then in 18-19, you see that we're budgeting a lot less because there are a couple of grants that have ended and that we don't expect to receive funding for those anymore. So then we get on to expenditures, and so this just kind of breaks up really where we spend most of our money. So obviously, our biggest expenditure is on salaries. So, you know, you look at certificated and classified salaries, they kind of even each other out in terms of the percent difference, which is great, but, you know, we spend $5 million on salaries. And then, obviously, the third part of that is the benefits. So we were down benefits 2.3%. Our salaries kind of balanced out. And you can see our budgets there are higher because they go up every year. So you'll see that's why those numbers are higher. And benefits, you can see, goes up significantly. Books and supplies, we were down 3%, and that's good because we're actually budgeting even less. I wish I had a really, really solid answer on why that is. I'm not exactly sure. But at least in terms of the actuals, we were below budget in terms of expenditures. Service and operations, down 4.5%, you know, and that's a pretty big number from 470,000 to 433. Again, it's good because our budget for that next year is less than it was. So I talked about the transfers in from MCN, the contribution, so that's flat. They're doing good. They pay us their $40,000 contribution every year, or not us, they contribute to the general fund. We don't expect that to change. And then our transfers out, so these are the funds that the general fund contributes to because whatever the state programs are don't fully fund them. And that's mainly our cafeteria and special ed. And you'll see that that was over. We had planned on contributing $140,000 approximately, and that went up to $145,000. And so in this one for 18-19, you can see that we have budgeted basically the same amount.
Jason,
Yes.
you said you don't know why books and services dropped so much for our 18-19 budget?
That is what I'm saying, yes.
Who would know that?
I would find the answer for you, but I didn't find it in time for this presentation. So,
I think
Who made that? Who put that number in there? Cynthia?
so the 18-19 budget was generated by Cynthia. Yeah.
I think the biggest contributor was a one-time bus grant that we got for last year that we are not anticipating getting for this year, under books and supplies.
Yeah. Well, that's money going out, so.
Right, so in other words, the reason why, you know, the 2017-18 plan was 378 and we're only doing 285 is I think there was a significant grant for bus.
For 18-19?
For 17-18, that we're not getting in 18-19. That's why it's less in the current year than it was last year.
And I think I had heard something about that, and I think we're applying for similar grants this year, but it's still in the application phase. And so, but I do recall hearing something about that, and that might be why. And even though it says books and supplies, really the way to divide up books and supplies and services and operations is by tangible things as opposed to services.
Okay, so Mike, so I understand. What you're saying is we thought we got a grant last year, so we spent more.
Right.
We're planning on spending 285 unless because we have a grant to spend. Okay, thank you. Same thing with services.
I don't know what nothing hits me in terms of services.
Yeah, I mean, we can look it up. I mean, there's no use speculating right now if we don't know the answer. I think that at the end of the year, we meet with all the departments and determine the budget going forward. So if there was a big expense last year and we're not planning on it next year, that's one thing. But we can get more.
Yeah, we definitely can. One thing that might be in the services is I know last year they redid the roof at the high school, and I know that was almost about that difference between the 18-19 budget. I mean, I think it was about $100,000. So it depends on whether that was in the budget last year or not, because it actually came out of deferred maintenance.
All right, thank you.
So, any other questions? So that's the general breakdown, and of course, if any of you guys have more questions about specific things in there, just let me know, and I'm happy to dig it up. So this is the other funds at a glance. So this is very, very high level. And like I said, a lot of these are really just for transparency and informational purposes. So child development is really the preschool and ELK. So you can see the 17 actual is, the 70,000 there is an expenditure. I've never run a preschool. That seems like a pretty good deal for running a preschool. And we're budgeting just slightly over that for this year. Our cafeteria child nutrition fund, so our total expenditure on that, salaries and material, $260,000. This is one that I said that we contribute, at least in 17-18, we contribute just over $100,000 from the general fund for. The rest is funded through government programs. And here is one where you'll see that the budget is less than it was. And this is another one of those categories where I'm not sure why. And I know that we are piloting a program, this new program that Jason was talking about. And we'll just have to wait until that pilot is over to kind of see where those numbers shake out. If this may need to be increased sometime later throughout the year. It may not. So if people want more information on why the budget is that way, I can dig into that and look. Otherwise, it would be something that would be reported on at first interim. Because the 18-19 budget at this stage is kind of all a big guess until we really get our first actuals in.
I am curious about the deferred maintenance number? If you could, not now, don't worry about it, but if you could maybe share that with Jason, he could let us know. Is anyone
Well,
else?
so the deferred maintenance one, so this is where the roof actually is in. So this fund actually has a carryover balance, and the roof was like $80,000 to $90,000, and so that's why the actual expenditures is so much higher than the budget. So this budget amount for deferred maintenance, Fund 14, that's what we expect to get basically every year, year over year. This is a program that was grandfathered in years ago, from my understanding, I think from when LCFF was implemented. And it just so happens to be that we get this funding every year for deferred maintenance just kind of locked in. What we don't use of it carries over, and there was a balance in there that they paid for that roof out of. So after they paid for it, I think the balance last year was around 70,000, and then there's another 76,000 we're expecting this year. So that's where, does that explain?
No, not really. I'm sorry. I mean, I appreciate what you're saying, but I'm curious what, more along the lines of what the needs are. So if there was a balance carryover about 70, and now we have 76, so you're saying potentially we have 146 potential funds for deferred maintenance for the 18-19 year?
I can answer that, Jason. So I think we have more in that balance. Otto is gonna come next month, or
Okay.
he comes twice a year and presents his budget. So we spent 138 grand last year on deferred maintenance. He's budgeting to spend 76, but he has more than that in his account.
So,
That's
no,
what I'm
actually, let me
wondering.
clarify.
I think there's.
This is so the 2018 budget is the budgeted revenue. So this may be a
Oh,
little
that's the revenue.
confusing. Yeah, so 76,000 is the amount that's budgeted for revenue for 18-19. So this is really just showing what we spent and how much we expect in revenue. So this may not be as clear as it should be, but this is the budgeted revenue of 76,000.
Well, maybe at the next
So-
finance meeting we can.
So 76,000 is going into deferred maintenance from the general fund,
Not from the general fund.
not from the general fund.
This is,
It's that special funding from Quattrochi, right?
No,
It's part, I
no,
don't think so.
no.
I mean, we don't get special funding.
I think Jason's right, that's coming from the general fund into the, you know, that's why, you know, some of this is difficult to interpret, because on the one hand, like, for example, child development, you know, represents total expenditures, the budgeted for total expenditures.
yeah, the context of the columns is changing a little bit, and
But
that's why you
the-
see some green ones there, and I was hoping to explain it away.
Okay,
So, Jason, do you think we can maybe flag this for a conversation at the next
Absolutely.
finance meeting?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I'd appreciate that.
Good
Thank
idea.
you.
I'm just gonna take a note. Okay, moving on to 17. So again, this is really just for informational purposes. This is a special reserve that was set up years back in more dire economic times. And so it's a fund that we still have that we pretend that we don't have, and it really is for a rainy day. It really is for emergencies. But it does generate revenue. So last year in interest, it generated about 10 grand. We never know what's going to happen with interest rates and things like that. So this year is budgeted to generate 4 grand, but it will likely be more than that, depending on if it's needed for something. Fund 25, which is our developer fees fund. So these are fees that are collected locally in the district for development projects. I know that Jason and Otto will be presenting. They have big plans for this fund as well, so I'm going to let them do that later. But just for informational purposes, you know, last year it generated $44,000 approximately, and expect it to probably generate another $40,000 this year. But again, our maintenance supervisor Otto and Jason have more information on that at future meetings. Another one, just for transparency, is the Fund 51. This is actually one that's not really held by us at the district. It's held by the county, but it is for bonds, so it's local taxes that are collected that the tax collector takes, and it generates revenues that pays off past bonds. So it's still there, it's still active, it's still doing what it's supposed to do. Fund 63, so this is our Mendocino Community Network Fund. Again, I'm not going to go too deep into this. Our business manager at MCN, Sage, I think he presents quarterly reports or once or twice a year. So he can talk more about this, but just to give you an idea of what money moves through that fund, you know, you have the total cost there of about $2 million, and the total expected expenditures. So this is, again, this is not expected budgeted revenue. This is budgeted expenditure on that line. I should have greened out the 76,000 one. And you'll notice that, you know, this is one of the few where expenditures are higher than the cost of people. I know that they're making a lot of investments down there in new services, so that would be why we're seeing higher expenditures than one might expect.
No, in that 1,335,000 is all the cost of services. In other words, for example, our biggest product is Fusion.
Right, and the cost of telecom. Yeah.
So the way that the Fusion works with MCN is that the part of the bill that is for phone basically just passes through without stopping.
Yes. Yes.
And you know, so it's I would say out of that that 1.35 million, almost all of that is going to Sonic.
I think like 80 to 90,000 or something.
80-90% of it is going to Sonic.
A lot of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I will say that, you know, their actual revenue over their actual expenditures is higher, so they are in the green. So that's always good. And they always contribute to the general fund, which I like. The self-insurance fund, so this is basically, essentially kind of another pass-through account, but, you know, the main difference here you see is the difference that's, you know, just the cost of insurance is just forever going up, and how much it costs us. So you'll see that, you know, these always even out at the end of the year. So last year was 95.7, and next year it's going to be 116.4. So
again, basically, the self-insurance category is mostly vision and dental benefits for employees that which the district pays for out of pocket. Your health insurance goes through CISC, which is, you know, accounted for differently. But the district benefits for employees for dental benefits and vision benefits are handled by the district itself.
right, yeah. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Our next steps. So basically our next updates to this year's budget. So once the unaudited actuals are approved by the board, we can actually get our beginning balances into Escape. So we hope to have that by early October. And then our position control, which is technically in Escape, but it's not really used to reflect directly on the actual budget itself. So we're hoping to get that in there. I mean, really, it needs to be done at least by the first interim, but I'm hoping to get it done sooner than that because right now I'm doing it all very manually, and it's a pain. And for those who aren't familiar with Escape, this is our new budgeting software that we just switched over to this year. So there's still definitely some growing pains there, but we're getting there, and I do still believe that overall it's going to be a positive. Also, we should have our period 1 tax revenues numbers sometime by mid-November, so we can get those updated. We have our auditor scheduled to be here November 5th through 7th, so that should be a lot of fun. And then our first interim and multi-year projection, which I will be presenting most likely, will be in December of this year. And that's it. And I just wanted to give some thanks to the board, you know, one for hiring me. That was pretty cool. And just being super supportive and asking me the right questions. Jason, our superintendent, who's been super supportive. And And then the rest of our district office staff, Michelle, I don't think Michelle or Tiffany are here, but Susan is here. You know, they know a lot more about the culture and how this office works than I do, and they've been really supportive. Also, I don't know if anybody knows Meg Kailikoli, which I think I'm getting that right. She is a director over at the county office. So she's really been my main support line for learning how to do all this stuff, and there'll be a lot more of that. And then my predecessor's predecessor, Sally Swan, who was in this role for many, many years. In her office, her footprints and her mark is still there from many years past, and she's actually come in and will help me out still to help me just learn how things work in this district. So I just want to thank her also.
So what do you think's been the hardest part of the learning curve?
You? That was a joke, by the way. Am I still in the probationary period? So the software and stuff is probably not the hardest part. It's just, you know, it's really learning the ins and outs of the budgets for this district. So I can talk to other business managers, and I can even talk to Meg at county, and the hardest part is every single district does things so differently. And it's learning what happens here. And so, you know, I have very few hours of Sally's time. Cynthia is retired. So, you know, if the staff in the district office doesn't know it, I got to go find it or figure it out or whatever. And that may be the hardest part, but it might be the funnest part also. You know, I'm a logical puzzle kind of guy. And so just, I would say it's the most challenging though. Just a lot of things just, there is no set way. And they're like, well, you should do it the best way you think you should do it. And I'm like, well, how was it done? I don't want to reinvent everything, but it's a challenge for sure.
But you're enjoying it?
I am, yeah, I am.
Good. Any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
So this is an action item. We need to approve the unaudited actuals.
I'll move to approve.
Second?
Moved, approved, and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
No one's opposed. We'll move to 10.2. Discussion of the District of Choice program. I understand that the draft MOU is not available at this point?
No, so we were warned that it might not be available, and we were hopeful that it would be. Up in Fort Bragg, they're having their board meeting right now, and they're discussing the same thing we're going to discuss, and that is the District of Choice program and how we work together between Fort Bragg and Mendocino Unified. You know, so I think we should definitely table this discussion until October, until we have the MOU. I think that'll be the best thing to do at this point. I mean, I could ramble on and on about the program, but then I'd be doing the same thing in October. So.
Okay. So we'll table that. Do we need a motion to table that?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right, 10.3, approval of a variable term waiver request for Cecilia's credential. So do you want to run us through that?
Sure. Our social worker has been hired as an intern. She started last year, and she entered into a 2-year program to get her credential. So she'll be finished at the end of this year, so we need to have a waiver to allow her to work in this position. So she will finish it up this year and no longer be an intern. She's doing great. And that's through San Jose State University that she's doing that through.
Okay, so any questions?
So she has a supervisor during this period until she's,
Yeah,
Okay.
Yep, she's for supervision. Yep.
Does someone want to make a motion to approve the waiver request?
I move that we approve the variable term waiver request.
Is there a second?
second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll move on to 10.4, approval of resolution 2018-8 regarding sufficiency of textbook materials. And Basically, the resolution states that we don't know of any instances of not having adequate materials.
This has been put to the test this year in the middle school. We like to have enough books for the classrooms, or for each class that has a textbook. So history, science, and math. We like to have enough so students can have one at home and one at school, so they're not lugging them back and forth. And we have enough to do that for history, but we have some math and science textbooks on order, so students don't have to carry them back and forth. So, but we definitely have enough for all students here at school.
Okay. Any other questions? So may I have someone move that we approve the resolution 2018-18?
That was the motion.
Second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So we're up to 10.5. Consideration of proposed changes to the board's meeting calendar for this year.
Susan, do we have that? I can't find it in my packet.
I have the calendar, I don't have the proposed changes.
Can't find it. All right, so I am wondering if the board would be willing to change the December 13th meeting to December 6th. One of the things that we need to do is the first interim report, and Jason had a pre-planned absence, I guess. He couldn't make it on the 13th, so the options were to either move it to the 6th or have the interim report be done through consent, or I could do the report, but the perfect world, we would move the board meeting to the 6th.
Fine with me.
Okay.
I have no problems.
Someone want to make a motion to make that change to our calendar?
Is that the only change?
Yeah. Yep.
Also a motion to move the December meeting to the 6th from the 13th?
Second, please. Second, Jim?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? No. All right, we'll go to 10.6, which is a request for allowance of attendance because of emergency conditions gets sent to the State Board of Education, and this is because the Comptche School was closed on the 5th of September because there was no power. It's fairly self-explanatory. Does anybody have any questions?
Does this mean they don't have to make it up? Is that the deal?
Right. Well, yeah.
I think one of the things that's up in the air is, whether or not, the state is going to be more rigorous about these kinds of things and have us build time into our schedule to, for power outages and snow days or whatever. But at this point, we don't have that built in.
Right.
So would someone make a motion to approve this request?
I so move. I'll second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So at this point, we'll go to the item we pulled off the consent agenda, which was the enrollment history, preliminary current year enrollment and projection. And Mark, you said you wanted that to be taken off?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment, a historical comment. Something to put in the back of our minds is that, and Jason's already, and Kim have already talked about this to some degree, but looking at kindergarten enrollment this year at 47, the last time we had 47 in kindergarten was 2000 to 2001. That was many years ago. When I came to the district in 1973, we had about 500 kids. Between 1973 and 2000, it doubled. And then very quickly, it dropped. In the years since 2000, we've gone from a revenue district to a basic aid district, and that's really changed our structure in a lot of ways, financially and so on. And if this is a one-year blip or something, that's, you know, it's not that much to be, yes, there might be some staffing issues, but if it's not a one-year blip, it could make cause some dramatic changes in the district, because as our enrollment increases, if it does, and that's an if, we're not going to get any money for that increase. You have to teach more students with the same amount of money, because we're now basic aid. When we first became basic aid in the early 2000s, we were a lot poorer. There was an adjustment period in there when we had a lot, you know, there was a lot of pressure on the district budget. And as years went along, we became richer and richer, in quotes, to a point where now I think we're in some ways very comfortable compared to other districts in California. We have some blessings that a lot of districts don't have in terms of our fiscal structure because of what's happened. So it's just something to think about next year when we look at enrollment again, is that we could need to do some long-term planning for growth if it comes.
How many of these students are district of choice? So there are some funds beyond our basic aid, but not, and
Not
that's
very
gone
many.
down.
Yeah.
Right, that has decreased, but I'm just to point out that, you know, do you know how many are?
Well, the vast majority of district of choice students this year were from Point Arena.
So then it's another basic, it said we don't get
Right.
any.
And are any of them kindergarten?
No, we didn't. Well, we had two district of choice students this year from Fort Bragg, in kindergarten. So yes, two.
It seems like a lot of the kindergarten growth is Albion and Comptche, right?
Right.
From somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are different things going on. I mean, I think the growth in the middle school and the high school was partly the closure of the public Montessori school in Fort Bragg.
Right.
We got students out of that transfer. The turmoil in the high school district in Point Arena has contributed to a lot of students choosing Mendocino as a preferred option, even with the commute. And, you know, one would think both of those things are temporary issues. Whether or not the kindergarten populations, you know, are going to continue to be at that level, or if it's just a spike in the birth rate at that particular time, you know, we'll have to see. But I certainly still see lots of kindergarten age kids in Comptche, and I imagine that will still be a growth for a while.
Yeah, and you know, just looking very locally, I have one daughter, she's 35. When my daughter was born, there were lots of teachers in this district having kids, and then there were none for many years, and now there are tons of teachers in this district having kids. And so I think this could be a real change at that level. And 15 new kindergartners every year means every 2 years you're buying a new teacher with no new funds.
Definitely something to keep an eye on.
Yeah. Well, I think that, as you've noted, Mark, you know, many times, is that our district has been blessed with having just about the lowest, the highest ratio of teachers to students
In the state.
in the state.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've enjoyed that, and we have done what we can to protect it. And so I think we want to involve everybody, you know, in terms of whatever discussions we have going forward.
Right.
Staff and families and everybody else. Okay, so I think this is an item that's for approval. I'm just going to ask for.
I move we approve the enrollment history report.
Okay.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we are up to 10.7, which are two board policies and administrative regulations up for a first reading regarding district residency and inter-district attendance.
How are we doing with our 6 o'clock? You feel okay with that?
Well, we still have 5 minutes, so we can get started on this and see how long it takes.
Okay.
So I don't have really anything to add. The policies committee did meet about the district residency. We did add the section in there about a private investigator, but also it adds an appeal process for if the family feels like the investigation which was done either by an investigator or by the district is not correct, they can appeal it. Our current policy has no option for an appeal. And then, and you can see this policy was done in 1992, so we have a lot of positive changes coming. But otherwise, it's all the same for residency. And then for for the inter-district transfer, district of choice, I still have not been able to reach anyone from CDE with an answer to my question as to whether or not we could be both. So I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask that we bring this back as a first reading in the event that I do get an answer in the next 5 weeks.
Well, I think it's also tied into what we can do in terms of an MOU with Fort Bragg, right?
Right.
I mean, that's all part of this.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so the policy, we were going to keep a lot of the policy, but you're right. If we can be a district of choice but do parts of the inter-district with Fort Bragg, then that would tie in nicely.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so does anybody on the policy committee want to add something to what Jason has said? No. All right, then I'll ask for a motion to approve this to approve the district residency as a first reading and to bring back the second part, 10.7.2, again next time as a first reading, but the district residency will come back on the consent agenda for approval.
Any questions? Also move.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, before I get to the next one, I will ask if anybody's here for parent committee comment. Items not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of this body may be addressed at this time. And if you want to speak, if you stand up and come over and get the microphone and identify yourself, we'd like that.
Michael, did Remy send anyone else a statement? Because I have a Remy's report.
We can do that afterwards. Let's get this first. And did anybody want to speak? Mm-hmm. It's more for the viewers at home. You know, I was asking Marshall, you know, what our count is, and he said, you know, sometimes 15 to 20 people are watching us live, sometimes up to 30, and the total hits in a month might be 100 to 400, depending on the issues that we've been talking about. So it's not just here that you're addressing, there's people out there.
I'm already nervous enough. Come on. Coming in a little bit. Sorry, I'm not good at this, but I do this. So, hello.
It's on.
It's on.
Hello. My name is Jez Anderson. If it works, I can't tell.
Yeah, don't worry about the microphone. Just speak to us.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm a parent of 2 sons here at K-8. One who's a kindergartner this year and another one who is in 7th grade. And the 7th grader has been here since he first started as a kindergartner. I'm here to express my concerns about what I've come to understand to be the open door arrangement that has been made with the Mendocino County Sheriff's Office. And in particular, I just want to share my concerns about what I experienced on the first day of school. My sons and I arrived in our brand new school clothes bright and early to check in. And we went towards the playground because that's where you're supposed to go when you arrive if it's like early. And it was about 8:15 a.m. And I saw an officer walking around on the campus, police officer of Mendocino County Sheriff's Office. From what I could tell, he was fully armed, gun, all of the accoutrements and everything. And he was walking around, he was observing students on the playground and off. And my little guy said, "Is everything okay?" And I didn't really know, but I assumed it looked, I just kept looking and like trying to figure out who was he watching. So I went right up to the officer and I made 2 attempts to talk to him and address him directly and ask him, is everything okay? Can you tell me why you're here? And he told me he couldn't talk to me, that he was busy. He had an earphone in and he had it like out, like it was like a phone almost, but it's a little thing, and he was talking into it. So I thought maybe he's calling in a report, maybe there's something wrong. So I stepped back, waited a good 5 minutes, and then, or maybe more like 3 minutes, and then walked again up to him and tried to address him again. He said the same thing to me, and at that point he began to walk around the side of the group of students that he was observing, which was a group of about 10 boys, and they were very loud, and there was noise, but it was fun noise. And I, at that point, clicked a picture, and because I had my camera, because it was the first day of school, and I usually bring it to campus, but we were taking pictures of my kids in their clothes. So I clicked a picture, and I went, checked my kid in, and then I went up to the office, and I asked them questions. And since then, I have met with the superintendent, with the principal, and then with both of them together. And I have asked for opinions of my community members and my mother and others who I care about, and I came here to express my concerns with what I've, not only the observation, but what I was told afterwards. There was no announcement, apparently, to parents. I heard nothing about it, and I'm fairly active. I'm a volunteer, and I read minutes and read everything that gets sent to me. And there was no announcement that there's apparently now an open door policy. When I talked to the superintendent, he said there's no change in policy, but that essentially he was approached by the sheriff's office who wanted permission to have more of a presence and to essentially walk on campus during school hours fully armed, and that he didn't, I won't speak for him, but I was told that he couldn't imagine that was something he would say no to, nor could he imagine that was something that he needed to ask parents about or inform parents of. It just seemed like an obvious answer, and he at one point said he didn't even feel like he could say no, that like why, that they had the authority just to be here. My questions and concerns really came up when I specifically started to ask him questions, and Kim as well. I should say that I used to run a nonprofit that had federal grant funds, and part of that we had a school resource officer program in Fort Bragg. So I was the person, the direct supervisor of that whole grant fund, and underneath of it was the SRO program. So I did work closely with the SROs. It's a whole different program. They are trained, there's parent involvement, there's community involvement, there is oversight. It's a stated problem that has been expressed and proven. Parents have been engaged throughout the process. So just having somebody here on campus walking around fully armed as a way of, I was told a variety of explanations. One I was given was that it would make students feel less likely to be intimidated by officers if they would see their officers just circulating amongst them. I don't believe that's a proven fact in my time and work with the SRO program. I don't think that they ever proved that it actually made, well, we can go into that some more, but whatever. I just feel like just throwing an officer on campus fully armed is not appropriate during school hours. And my other concerns were things like when I asked questions like, so is he required to check in at the office? I am as a parent, if it's after school's already started. And they said no, we would like him to. It'd be nice if the officers would check in. Those were the exact words, nice. It would be nice if they would, but they can come in at any point they want. They could arrive on the north end. I was told they could walk all the way across campus. They could have multiple interactions with students and teachers all the way across campus. And the words I were told was there'd be nothing unusual about that, or there'd be nothing concerning about that. I am concerned about that. I feel that if you call an officer to campus, there should be a reason, and there should be somebody that knows that that person's coming, and there should be the opportunity for the school to state an issue or a concern. Because basically what I was told is like, well, if he observed anything along the way that he was concerned about, he could directly address it in those words, basically. Like he could directly address the student, the parent, whomever he saw that was of concern. This is to me not how school works. I feel like I leave my kids here in your care because school is mandatory and I believe in public education. And then you decide who comes onto campus, you being the school district. And just having an open door policy like that for an armed officer to completely go around, observe whomever or talk to whomever, I'm just not comfortable with that. And that's not how my understanding is of school or SRO programs. I was also extremely concerned when I started asking, so does this person have an additional training? The way that I was communicated with was almost like I was being mocked. It was very hurtful because that was a valid question. It was based on my personal experience of understanding an SRO is provided additional training and support. And what I was basically told is, I can't even imagine what kind of additional training you could offer an officer. That to me is not a well thought out statement because there is a multitude of additional trainings on everything from dealing with kids with disabilities, dealing with excitable youth, dealing with youth who have issues with authority, and just how to safely carry all these guns and weapons and stun guns through a campus of kids jumping. I mean, there are kids coming out from every corner. There is additional training available, and if you're going to change a policy, whether you call it a change or not, I would really appreciate being notified, and so I'd have an opportunity to discuss it. I did offer to participate in the school safety committee. I want to be part of the solution. I don't want to just be part of the problem, making it harder for you guys. I haven't heard back yet. I'm hoping that, whoever sits on that committee, that you have a broad representation. But the last thing I want to say, because my greatest concern is the lack of engagement of students. I feel like if you feel like you have a safety issue, and I mean, I remember the school when it was a lot different. 2 schools, not one, right? The whole thing. We all know the physical issues that we face on this campus. But if you really perceive that you have that much of a problem, I would really strongly advise that we should have a student body working on this, a student group. Beyond the actual elected student body, but the students that are, when that last 3 shootings ago happened, the 3 school shootings ago at the end of last year, my student was devastated. They were talking about, they had that little march, but they were really talking about, what can we do? We want to do an event. We want to do an activity. What can we do? And my son was coming home feeling so frustrated and so powerless. What could he do? And I felt like you wanted not to just send people out marching through Mendo, and I understand you had this, this thing here to pull them in and get them to share their perspectives and be more of a community about it. But then did anything ever happen of that? Is there a school safety advisory group that has students in it? Like, where are the students in this conversation? I just feel like the students are not engaged here. Instead, we're just like, cops want to come to campus. Can't say no. Sure, go anywhere you want. I just feel like that's just making sense. I don't feel like any of this makes any sense. And I feel like I've been heard, but not necessarily treated very well in this process of expressing my concerns. So here I am.
Thank you, Jess. Somebody else, you want to speak on the same issue?
I'm fairly sure that I cannot articulate it as well as she did. But I share many of the same concerns as she does as well. My children came home.
Could you identify yourself, please?
Oh, I'm so sorry. My name is Danielle. I have 2 children that go to this school, a 7th and an 8th grader. And I was shocked to find out that an officer came to the campus and was just free to roam. My problem is not the armed part. I believe that our teachers should be armed. I believe that that would prevent many school shootings. But the armed part is not the problem. It's the freedom to come and go to, my children came home scared. The presence of police do not belong in education, especially if, I don't know the police history of this particular school, but I can tell you, we moved from the Bay Area to get away from these things, to get away from, there's no reason for for a police officer to have a presence in a school. Our children should not be made or forced, because they don't have a consent or a say-so in this, in a police presence. They shouldn't be forced to get used to police. They're everywhere. We already have enough problems with them. At a safe school where there are no problems, it is unnecessary. I mean, I can see if there was a problem, you would call them, they would come. The fact that they are welcome to, I didn't even know that part, that they're welcome to just come and just roam as they please. I feel like that's, there needs to be rules and stipulations, and we should be notified, and they should not have an open door policy. Our children don't need that. They need education. They don't need, what are they being protected from? What are the threats to this school? I don't feel that it's unnecessary. And I'm 100% uncomfortable with it. I don't like it. Why would you have them here? And yes, if they were to be here, there needs to be rules in place, and they do need additional training. There's many, many, many videos you can see of officers coming into schools, and actually kids get the guns away from the officers. Or one of them, it was bumped out of his holster, and it hit the ground, and it went off, and it shot the wall. I feel like they pose more of a threat than a safety, and I am completely I find it unacceptable. So I don't know what the solution is other than, I don't know the solution. I'll say I don't, but I would like one. And I think that parents should be notified ahead of time, especially if you guys are, why are they here? If you're just calling them to roam the campus, we should definitely be notified. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else want to speak on this particular issue? I'm just going to take a break and say that if Kim or Jason want to respond, I encourage them to do so. If not, I think we should think about putting them on a future agenda. But
I have another question. I'm so sorry. Can I?
Go ahead.
And I had asked if they were going to, or if they're welcome to come back, or if they're going to come back, or when can we expect it? And they said, get used to it. That it could be all the time. So how often are they invited here? How often are they allowed to come? How often are they going to be here? I don't know if I could ask one of you two. I don't know if you guys know the answers, Jason or Kim, I'm not sure. But I would like to know, do you guys plan on them being here in the future?
Kim, do you want to come up and get the microphone?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't have planned dates as of right now for sheriff officers to come. Over the course of my career as principal here, they have been coming about once a month. They stop by. They usually do check into the office, but there's no plans. Like, I don't have a set schedule. I don't call the sheriff's department and say, hey, what days are you coming? That kind of thing. They just show up when they're able, and it happens about once a month or once every 2 months.
What is the purpose?
I don't know if they have a particular purpose of being there, just checking in with us, seeing how things are going. For me, I do see them as a community partner, and I think having them get to know our facilities, get to know our students, get to know me, our staff members, is helpful. We do have incidences where we do need to call 911 and ask for support, and it is the sheriff's department that responds, and so I see it as an opportunity to work with them and build our community partnership with them.
Sure, and I can add on to that. I mean, I'm very proud of the relationship we have with the Mendocino County Sheriff's Office. Extremely proud. I mean, I meet on a regular basis with the lieutenant. I met with Sheriff Allman last May. They're always offering their assistance. We talk about some of the policies and procedures that we have, and we're on the same page. I have no interest in denying a police officer from our campuses. I'll be very honest with you. I have absolutely no interest in that. I want to build a positive relationship with the people who protect us. If we want their help, they're going to come, and we're going to be able to work together because of that positive relationship. Jez, I emailed today about the security committee, so you should have gotten that email today, in case you haven't.
About the security what?
Committee. She said that she hadn't heard back, but yeah. But I'm informing that committee. You're on my list, and so I look forward to having your feedback then too. I don't know what kind of agenda item we would have in the future.
I'm thinking, that perhaps, the committee that you're establishing will come back with recommendations on the whole subject matter.
Sure.
One of them might be
Definitely.
the appropriate, relationship with the sheriffs,
I just feel very strongly that it's appropriate and positive. I mean, I cannot.
I think that
And so
Just a second, Judge.
I emailed our Lieutenant Stefani on the coast here and said, can you tell me the training that our police officers get? And he gave me a whole rundown of the training, and it just seems like it's fantastic training, and they have the most, the best holsters. They have tons and tons of hours of firearms training. So it's not a school resource officer program. That is a completely different program. But I guess, I understand the concern. I don't have that concern, and I'm being very honest with you about that.
But I think that, I'm hoping that in the process of having the discussion in the committee format, that you may not all agree on it, but you can agree what the issues are, and if there's a real conflict, bring it to the board, and the board has to make, a decision. But I think that to me, the fact that the people came to this meeting and expressed, some deep concerns is something we should take seriously. And I know, I'm not saying you haven't or anything like that.
I want to make sure that I have taken it seriously, and if I could say my part, I disagree. I did not laugh you off. I don't feel like I laughed you off. We were having an informal conversation in the parking lot. Informal conversation. We were going back and forth. We were having a good conversation, I thought. And I have engaged you. I sat in. I've met with you, and we did a thorough job of explaining this process and why they're here. So,
Michael?
I mean,
I would appreciate that we agendize this. I think it's a significant enough issue that I think the board ought to speak to it. Not that I have any concerns with our current policy, although I don't particularly wear them. I think it's enough of an issue. Just as a discussion.
Right, but do you think we can wait until after this committee has had a chance to meet and have some input from their work, or do you want to do it ahead of that?
I don't know.
I'd like to see it ahead of that, only because it could end up providing information that would be helpful to the committee in some of their planning. I don't currently have an opinion. I always appreciate that parents bring concerns. I'd be curious, maybe having a couple of teachers communicate how they see the reactions in their classroom, or another staff person, or I don't know if Kim, if you want to get the pulse on the student feelings around this. Maybe some students know about concerns across the country and they feel better seeing someone there, or maybe some kids feel, why is this happening in our school? Does that mean something's going to hurt us? And I think we don't know, and I think maybe that is really valuable information for the committee. So maybe can a couple of people get a feel for it and come forward and let us know how the students are feeling?
Do you want me to look into it and report back to you, or are you asking for me to find people to come
I'd like to also speak. I really feel like the committee should meet first. I think the board meetings are a really difficult place to deal with some issues in depth. They're more of, people do the work and they bring it to the board. And I really would like to hear parents' concerns. I'd like to hear the district. I'd like a list of, what are the questions? What are the things that parents need to know more about, students need to know more about, the board needs to know more about? Then bring that work to the board, which is what we do in most situations, is the work gets done and then it comes to us.
Well, let me ask Jason, was that part of were you looking at the idea of the officer coming to campus as part of the committee, or is now that this is coming forward, it gives you more information to share with the committee?
The latter. I mean, it would be more information to share with the committee.
See,
get
I
their
don't know.
feedback on how the committee feels about having an officer come to campus.
So it's a little bit of a, chicken and egg thing. I don't know if the committee has a vision of the breadth of what they're covering. That's why I was thinking it would be helpful to get a little bit of input. And so they can go into it knowing the scope of what they are addressing. And I don't know if they have that vision. I know they're talking about the flow of traffic on campus, things that were brought up in the past, but I haven't heard this specific thing as something the committee was addressing. So,
No.
Anyway, I'm certainly not attached to it happening before. If maybe Jason just wants to invite this issue to the committee, people can report to the committee. I think that the committee needs to develop what it's addressing, and I don't think it really has formed that yet. So that was the reason I thought it would be helpful. But if you want to communicate directly with people,
Our committee will most likely meet at the end of this month, so it's gonna, those are
I'd also like to have the list that you have of the training they have, as well as the equipment. Of course, you know, I used to own or I still do own a company that sells police equipment in Virginia, so I understand it. But you know, we need to be careful. Just because the list is long doesn't mean it has, for example, training for how to handle a kid who has special needs, who gets anxious, etc. And I'm not sure that the people who are coming on our campus have those specific training, and I think they should. So I think we need to look at that. So if you can get that list for us and also for the committee, I think that's something that I'd like to see.
And I do want to share with the community that, you know, we have the other extreme of people who want to fence our school, you know, and so there are so many different parents, different thoughts, different approaches, and so, you know, we have to move forward deliberately and respecting the various ways of raising children and concerns that parents have. So I don't want to turn a blind eye to, you know, people who feel there isn't, they'd love an armed guard by a gate, at the, you know, that people have to give a ID to every time they come on campus. So we really need to deal with all the concerns.
I appreciate that, thank you. And I had just had one more question, because I did call the school office today, up there, and I tried to get a copy of the safety plan. Does that address, because I know you're approving it on the consent agenda, but they said they didn't have it, somebody was supposed to call me back, I never got a call back. Is there a copy of that actual safety plan that you guys?
I believe it was emailed to you.
Oh, you did email it?
Yep.
I didn't get either of your emails today. Okay. But it's an attachment, it's like a document, but that was approved on the consent agenda tonight?
Tonight.
So does that relate to this at all, or are we gonna do?
It does not.
Thank you.
Can I ask one question? You said that the SOP, that's a different program, so what is the program that?
There is no program. It's simply it's an SR, the School Resource Officer program, is a separate program. This isn't a program. This is simply, I was contacted by the lieutenant here on the coast, and he asked when the first day of school was, and they wanted to have a deputy come and say hello to parents, students, teachers, and I said sure.
But he wouldn't even answer a parent's
Well,
question.
I understand that he was the only deputy, of course, in this area. That we're very short-staffed here, from what I'm being told, and he was on the radio talking to someone.
Are they allowed to go in the classrooms?
We never have had one go into the classrooms. They have no reason to go in the classroom, so.
I was told yes.
And I'm just now finding out that this has been an ongoing thing.
Well, you know, it's an ongoing thing that they visit. They usually, like Kim said, they pretty much always check into the office, and we sit down and we have a discussion. How's it going?
But so this has been an ongoing thing, if they check
Sure.
in at the office, well, you just said
Sure.
it wasn't.
What?
Perhaps we
You just said it wasn't an ongoing thing, but then you said that they check in the office when they come.
I think
I'm confused.
that's all right. You can talk to each other on the sidebar.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
You know,
Can I just say
we only have one more item, so.
Michael, can I add one thing? Thank you for coming and speaking your concerns. As I've said many times, parents don't show up to these meetings at all. So by all means, encourage other parents to just come to the board meetings and speak.
Is there anybody else who came to speak during parent committee comment on any other issues? Okay. Tobin, if you want to give Remy's report.
Happy to give Remy's report here. So this is from the student rep, Remy. He says, first of all, I would like to apologize for my absence at this meeting. I'm doing an independent study abroad for 2 weeks in France. This first 2 weeks of school have been busy yet productive and fun at the high school. We decided the homecoming theme of TV channels, cartoons, cooking, etc. This came after a long 2-week discussion, and we decided this to be the best option. I'll give you a little background on it. There was another choice, and our theme this year is related to empathy. And some students felt that maybe the second choice, which had something to do with clicks, I believe, might be counterproductive to the other things we were trying to do at the school. So it was this great discussion that played out amongst the students. And I thought I was going to have to decide it at some point. But apparently they did. This is the first I've heard that's the final decision. So that's what the students came up with. He says, our sports teams have been doing well, having boys soccer tie Fort Bragg 1-1 in the Coast Cup. It was this amazing match, 1-1, but losing the penalty shootout 8-9. It was apparently quite a match. Also, the boys soccer team, they won their first league match, 9-1 versus Rincon Valley. The girls volleyball team has been doing well. Cross country had their first meet. So he says our sports teams are all starting off their seasons. At school, we have been having our first of many planned intramural sports tournaments. Anyone is welcome to sign up and play in these tournaments. The first tournament, I think, Henry, it's finishing up this week, right?
Yeah, it's finishing tomorrow.
Finishing tomorrow is beanbag toss.
Yeah, Fiona Regalia and Aaron versus Luciano Martinez and Liam Robbins.
And Luciano and Liam ousted me and Marcy, so yeah, all right, good. It's been going well and attracted many students to stay on campus and build a sense of community. We plan to do the same with the rest of the tournaments as well. The returning students have been friendly to the new students, and as a result, they seem to be settling in nicely at our school. This year is looking to be a good one, and I'm looking forward to it. And that's the word from Remy, probably on his way to France when he delivered this.
Thanks, Tobin. Okay, so we're up to 10.8, which is board policies and administrative regulations regarding two very different subjects, uniform complaint procedures and vacations and holidays. Did you want to talk about it, or did you want
Well, I'll hand out the corrected version of the UCP. It has, we've been going back and forth between using the CDE version of the uniform complaint procedure and the Gamut CSBA version. And so we have decided, Susan and I, after talking today, to go with the CSBA version. So it's really information only right now. I do have a lot of comments, but I'm going to bold out. I haven't had a chance to give you this in bold yet, all the changes. So
Okay.
I'll have that as a first reading, and you'll be able to see what the changes are. And then the vacations.
Basically, the changes are to bring us into accordance with law, legal changes?
Right, yeah. It's recommended that we look at it once every year, so. As also for the vacations, I would like to bring this forward as a first reading, and the policy committee will have some work to do before we discuss it next month, but we can at least move it forward.
Okay. So, do we need a motion to bring those back? I don't think so.
It's information.
Yeah.
Information. Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about a couple future agenda items. Is there anything else that people want to have us be thinking about?
Can I add the CASP report, the standardized testing report?
Okay. Is that the California dashboard?
No, that's the Smarter Balance, but the California dashboard is coming too, so we could throw that on there too.
Okay.
The dashboard update for the local indicators.
Mm-hmm.
I think that has to be done by November.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
Comptche next month. I have to say that 10 times to myself.
Okay. We have a study session before then.
Right.
But our next regular meeting is in Comptche. Thank you all. We're adjourned.